Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers, and this morning I'm looking at a book from Ashgate Publishing. It's got an interesting title and one that took my attention very quickly. It's called The Calling of Law. It's got a subtitle, The Pivotal Role of Vocational Legal Education. It's been edited by Fiona, Westwood and Barton, and it's part of the Emerging Legal Education series from Ashgate. This is the book here. It's actually a hardback, which is quite interesting. You can see the basic front page of it and the spine. And then the back has a lot of information setting out what this book is all about. There are some quotes and various other bits and pieces. It's an interesting book from a number of perspectives. Let me show the index and what's in the book first of all. That's the back of it. The index is again very important, very detailed, the index. Then you've got individual chapters, and you've got a structure here. Obviously they are articles and contributions. It's very detailed and quite a high style. This one is chapter 10. We must make law students client ready, it says. Starts with an introduction, and you can see even from the previous chapter there are a lot of references, a sort of bibliography right at the end of the chapter, and of course there is a conclusion. So you've got a nice logical structure throughout of the beginning, the middle and the end. The introduction, the main meat of the article, the chapter, and then a conclusion. That shows you the Emerging Legal Education series that they're talking about. There are other books in the series. Then there's the front sheet there. Then you come into the contents section. You can see that quite clearly. There are only 5 sections in total. There are some figures as well that are included. A list of tables. There's a bit of an analytical thing, and then a note of the contributors and editors. So this is an editorial job by the two people, Fiona and Karen. But obviously there are a lot of other people who've been involved. You can see all the names. I can't go through all of them, unfortunately, because they're all very eminent people. Part 1 is called Curiosity. Actually, I had curiosity when I saw the title of it. It's an interesting book because we are entering an era now, and this is not directly related to this, but we're entering an era of public legal education, I think, where the guys in school are going to be told a lot more about how the legal system operates and what the law's about. Mainly because there's so much ignorance actually around. People know they've got rights, the Human Rights Act, forget sometimes about the responsibility element of it, but the calling of law, why we become lawyers, why I became a barrister and so forth, those issues are sort of very wide ones, because it's a motivational issue. Certainly was in my case, and most of my pupils that I've had and the people I've taught are quite highly motivated and interested in the legal world, and that of course is a good starting off point. So you don't want to force people into something they don't want to do. Now my wife and I have written a review of this, and we've started off being a bit provocative. We said, is law a calling? Read this book and banish all doubt. Now this is what we say. The book reminds lawyers that the law, which they have chosen as a career, is a calling as well as a profession, and as such is imbued with a moral dimension which they can ignore only at their peril. They, as well as any reader interested in the law, will therefore be concerned with the multiplicity of issues covering legal education, in particular its future as well as its present and its past. Under the able editorship of Fiona Westwood and Barton, this book, which is a recent publication from Ashgate, brings together in one convenient volume the commentary and insight of no less than 15 international contributors whose expertise in professional education encompasses medicine as well as law. The legal jurisdictions covered include the United Kingdom, the United States of America, Canada, Australia and Hong Kong. They're all common law and all committed to producing effective practitioners with ideally a sense of calling to their chosen profession. Quote, a sense of calling and all it implies is particularly important, says Barton, in the wake of the far-reaching changes brought about by the Clementi report, which you'll all probably remember, from 2004, and then subsequently we had the Legal Services Act in 2007, and then the Scottish version came out in 2010. It's still dealing with that at the moment, and there will in future be more legislation involving legal services, I'm sure. The book stresses the necessity of encouraging budding lawyers to place their moral and intellectual emphasis on, as the editors suggest, culture over industry, character over eloquence, and calling over skills. Interesting point for the bar vocational course, possibly, but however, an interesting point nevertheless, which is probably why they make the ethical side of our activities at the bar, and I believe now in the Law Society, mandatory lectures to attend, because calling over skills, I think, is probably the key to this, because of the type of position we are in, advising clients and generally doing our legal business. Some readers might regard all this as an achievable ideal, and others may not. Still, others may argue that lawyers, especially those aiming at distinction in their professional life, should strive to exemplify all these attributes at once. Well, frankly, I think we do. I mean, it's a special type of activity, being a barrister or being a solicitor, and I think most of them do actually achieve that. And I say that because I'm biased, of course, but I think at the moment we have a very high calibre, generally speaking, of members of the bar in practice, and likewise, although we are over manned, according to some people, we do actually have very gifted people in the profession. Let me say something about the book again. Of particular interest is an article in the book by Donald Nicholson, which examines in detail the concept of the clinical LLB, which, in addition to the standard LLB curriculum, also puts special emphasis on issues relating to professionalism, ethics and justice. And of course that's departing from the straight, pure academic type of core subjects that I did all those years ago when I sat my LLB. The aim here then with the book is to promote a spirit of what is referred to as altruethical professionalism amongst nascent lawyers. The term has a number of connotations, of course, and applications, but basically it means subordinating self-interest to the interests of the client and the community. And I have to say, I think most of us do that. I certainly do. I want to make sure at the end of the day that the client's rights are represented. I get for him or her what it is they want, or I try to protect them. And I also have to think about the interests of the community. I'm well aware in the criminal jurisdiction they don't like that very much sometimes, but I think it's important when it costs £40,000 per person to lock up or put in custody. One needs to think of these things because the public actually pay at the end of the day. So there is a responsibility, and also there's a responsibility, of course, when you're doing advocacy, to know how far you can go, because the judge will stop you, certainly, but there are certain things that you yourself must know about, and that again brings into the concept this calling of law. Now, among the book's many useful features is the extensive bibliography, which I've indicated, which is actually the end of each chapter, which the contributors have produced. There's an amazingly rich reservoir here of references for further research in this area of legal scholarship, which has become increasingly central and pivotal in legal education on both sides of the Atlantic. I'm sure we've learned a lot from our American colleagues, but of course the common law has been here for 800-900 years or so as it's developed, and it is the greatest legal system in the world. And I make no bones about that. There's nothing better than it. It has its imperfections, of course, but it's the best. And I hope people will remember that. We also have one of the greatest professions in the world, the legal profession in England and Wales, and the calibre is good. Now, let me conclude by saying practitioners and legal educators alike will certainly value this book as a catalyst for detailed and informed discussion on the future of vocational legal education. However controversial it may seem in some respects, this is a thought-provoking as well as an inspiring read, and the publication date is cited at 2014. Now, as I say, it is an intellectual book, without any doubt. You can see I'm just opening right in the middle. Public interest vocationalism. Interesting set of words there, but you see again the huge amount of bibliographical referencing going on there. They've done a lot of work to produce this, looking at the vocationalism in its own particular way. I did the bar vocational course like everybody else, and it was about skills to a certain extent. The question really there, in my view, is how do you teach some skills, because you either have them or you don't. And of course when you're young you're not going to have as much experience, and skills do come with experience, which is why it's nice to see older people to a certain extent reading for the bar, so that they've actually got some understanding of what a client will have a problem with. Calling, character and clinical legal education. There we go, there's another one which gives you an idea. That's Donald Nicholson's essay. I'm very pleased with this book anyway. I'd like to thank the authors very much and Ashgate for producing it. I think it's something that's very important as we look to the future of the legal education as a whole, with the problems we have. I mean, 300 pupilages and 3,000 people being called to the bar. Something is going to have to give at some stage, but we don't want it to affect the high standard that we have and the fact that what we do as lawyers is a calling. I have no doubt about that myself, and I'm grateful to them for reinforcing my idea, so thank you to all concerned. Bye-bye.